November 5th, the day that so many people have been holding their breath for. Let's talk about how this may or may not have an impact on you as a real estate investor. Thank you so much for joining me today for today's episode of the Lady Landlords Podcast. Many of you, if you have not already voted in the election in the United States, I hope you get out there and that you are able to do that today. But one topic that has been coming up often in our Lady Landlords Facebook community is about how this election and our candidates are really going to have an impact on that real estate investing position. What will that actually do for us? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're also going to really kind of break down what we need to start thinking about for our own taxes this year. This is something that, believe it or not, year end is really right around the corner. And now is the time to start focusing on what we should be doing, what we can be doing before the end of the year to really be able to help us as a real estate investor. Now, back a few months ago, I felt like we were also all holding our breath as a real estate investor. Maybe not as closely as we are today, but definitely over the past couple of weeks. One of the reasons for that is because we did see a decrease with interest rates a few months ago. This was something that, and if you've not seen this video on my YouTube, or if you've not listened to that episode on our podcast, please make sure to go back and listen to that. But we talk all about when the feds cut that reserve rate, what that actually did and what impact that had on real estate investing. A lot of real estate investors actually felt that that was going to dramatically decrease the rate that we were going to be seeing for HELOCs, for mortgages, all of those different things. And honestly, that was really not what we saw. We saw actually a little bit of an uptick in what those rates were initially. And then now they've kind of settled a little bit more, but there really were not the impact that we saw that we were going to be seeing as real estate investors with a decrease in what those rates are. So back in that episode, I really talked about how I felt that moving forward now, we were going to still continue to see these high prices on houses, that interest rate drop does not have a direct impact on what mortgage rates would be. That is not always seen. So I feel like now a lot of real estate investors are actually learning that piece and realizing that no, that all of a sudden, all because the feds cut that rate does not necessarily mean that they can buy a house and it's going to be cheaper, that they can refinance, or that they can get a HELOC for a cheaper rate than what they were looking for. So I think it's important that we continue to get that education on what those numbers look like. But what does that really mean? I said in that episode that I still expected to see prices of housing staying rather high. And I think we're going to continue to see that for this time being. This is going to be one of my reminders again, that if you are sitting there being like, ooh, let me wait for interest rates to drop or housing prices to drop or these other things to make these dramatic changes. Honestly, I think every day you continue to wait, there are opportunities that you're just absolutely missing out on because we are not seeing those changes. And honestly, I don't think we're going to be seeing them for quite some time. But what has that done? Now that we are still kind of in this holding pattern, I think with this election, we have to remember too that there's going to be an impact clearly of decisions that are made today, but we might not see the impact of all of those decisions really for another year or two. When we're in 2026 filing our taxes for 2025, maybe we'd be able to see what some of those impacts are. There are a lot of plans between Trump talking about the increasing of tariffs and what that's going to do, and then how that would not necessarily have as great of an impact on taxes. You have Harris talking about how there would be a credit towards those that would be buying their first home, and how that would actually be given preferential treatment also to those that have parents that were not in a position to also be able to buy a property. So there are a lot of ideas that are still floating around out there. Remember too, that with our checks and balances system that we have in our government, that these are also decisions that they're going to have to be passed through Congress. So whatever we're kind of hearing today about what these plans might look like and what this breakdown might be in the future, that does not necessarily mean that that's exactly how it's going to look in the future, if it even is passed or what's negotiated to really be able to have those things happen. This is why it's always very important to make sure that we are participating in news, that we are understanding policies, legislation that's proposed, all of those different things. It's really important at all levels of government for us as investors to start not just understanding the conversations that are happening, but also being a part and lobbying for the things that we do find important ourselves. But with what we can do now until we see the outcome, which we may or may not even know today specifically, is to really start thinking about what we can do within tax strategy. So if you have not yet, we are actually going to be doing a free tax strategy for real estate investors presentation in the Lady Landlords community coming up on Monday, November 18th. So do make sure to register for that. It's actually a 2-day training that we're going to do over the 18th and on the 19th. So make sure to register and make sure to grab the time slot that works for you to be able to join us, because there will be no recordings of that. But I found like the tax strategist of my dreams. And whenever I find somebody fantastic, I always want to make sure to share it with our Lady Landlords community. So we are going to have a fantastic tax strategist that really focuses on working with those that are in the real estate space. So it's going to be fantastic to hear what are some things that you can do before the end of the year to be able to make an impact on your taxes for this tax year, for 2024. Okay. But so make sure to go down to the show notes, make sure to register for that. Also, you'll see it in the Lady Landlords Facebook group. I have the link there, so you can also register there. But we need to really start with just understanding what those basics actually are. We need to get very clear on how we should even be filing our personal taxes. Many of us in the Lady Landlords community still have either a W-2, a part-time job, are doing something else for work, maybe 1099 work, whatever it may be, in addition to real estate investing. With that, it's very important to understand what you're still looking at as your baseline within your personal taxes in that addition of what you are doing. That's why it's really important to be able to work with a CPA, to be able to work with somebody that does tax strategy, that will be able to provide that information and guidance to you there. But the best thing that you would be able to do is really making sure that you are keeping those things separate, okay? Anything that you're dealing with your real estate, anything that you're dealing with your personal funds and your personal life, those two things really should not be commingled. We'll get into properly structuring what that looks like in a minute here, but it's really important to have that record keeping, being able to keep your receipts, to be able to track what your expenses are. One, as a real estate investor, it's incredibly important to even just know if you're making money or you're losing money, right? We are all here to be able to make money. So you need to start there, but really being able to track that information is going to be what's going to be just a baseline place that you need to be able to start. Okay. So start tracking that. If you do not have a good system for that now, that is definitely something that you're going to want to implement for 2025. But anytime you're doing your taxes, you really need to have a good accounting within that. You want to be able to have your bookkeeping and make sure that you have that information really kind of structured. So start to put it into a place already where that space is. And we need to be keeping real estate and anything related to that and that business, right? Even if you do not have an LLC, even if you own properties in your own home, you still have a business. That is still expenses that you have in that space, and you need to keep that separated. On the other side of that, then you need to be able to make sure that you have anything that's dealing with your personal expenses on one side and then your real estate on the other side. Start to keep track of those things. When you would still go to have your taxes done, your accountant should still be asking you for all of your expenses, all of your income, just as much as you're going to hand over your W-2, your 1099. You still also want to be able to make sure that you have some structure. You could put this together from your credit card bills, but really make sure to kind of separate out those two different categories. Okay. That's something that you really then want to, and this might be more of a moving forward thing, really think about the operations of your business. Even if you have one rental property or you have 50 rental properties, really having that clear bookkeeping is going to be incredibly important. This is something that I would highly recommend you make this a New Year's resolution. And I know we tend to make New Year's resolutions of like, ooh, I want to buy a rental property, or ooh, I want to lose weight. But really, you might want to say, hey, you know what? I want to get a comprehensive, holistic picture of really what my finances are going to look like in this new year. That is something that I definitely recommend that you start to think about. And once again, our free training next week for real estate investors on tax strategy is going to give you a lot of different prompts on how you can do that and systems you can use to really make that nice and easy. I don't know about anybody else, but tracking finances, tracking money, not necessarily my favorite thing either, but this is going to be vitally important. You can't think about what you can do to make better strategy or save money on taxes until you actually know what monies are going out, what monies are coming in, and how you could really restructure them. Then within that, once you kind of have that baseline information, that's where you can really start talking about how your entity should be structured, right? You have LLCs, You have buying in your personal name. People can also have what's called an S Corp. All of those different things can come into play here. But until you really get a full understanding of what your taxes are going to look like or what your income and your expenses really look like, it's really not in a position to be able to get that advice that you even need to say really what that structuring should look like. We can talk all day long about the opportunities of using your LLCs and umbrella insurance and what those things need to look like from a protecting place, from that liability perspective that you're going to need to be able to have. Got it. That's stuff that we still need to be able to talk about, and that we can have a more clear conversation about. But really getting a full idea of what's going on with your taxes and with your expenses and your income is how we're going to be able to advise you in that space. So my recommendation, now listening to this podcast, hopefully the week of November 5th here, I want you to start to put together a little bit of a capture of what this past year has looked like for you. Okay, that's going to help you a lot when you come to the free training for real estate investors on November 18th. But think about this ahead of time. If you can spend a couple minutes over that next week here and be able to say, hey, let me just get together a little bit of my documents, let me throw together a Google Sheet, an Excel document, whatever you use, and really just start to get a little bit of the bare bones of what monies were coming in from your personal life, maybe your day job versus monies were going out. And then also think about that from your business perspective, any of the rental properties you own. That will put you really ahead of the game for that presentation on November 18th and on November 19th. So that is going to be my homework for you to do now to really get the best out of that 2-day training. Okay. Also, let me know if you have any other questions that you would like to be able to talk through on that. I think it would be a great opportunity to have that, to be able to speak to somebody that really has been doing this professionally for so many years. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more clarity about what's going on in this election and what we should be able to expect. And then that way we can plan ahead. That's the amazing thing about tax planning is every year, whatever you do now in this year, what we can make sure to adjust and what we can strategize still within our last 2 months here in 2024 will still lay a foundation for 2025. So then we can continue to tweak and improve what you would want to do strategy-wise in 2025. And then you're going to have all of 2024, all of 2025. And then that way you will be able to really take advantage of any changes that we will see rolling out through our government, really by the time we are now filing our 2025 taxes all the way over. I can't even believe we're talking about that idea of April 2026. But this is why it is so important to do that planning now, because all of those little things that we're doing here will add up and continue to make a difference. And as real estate investors, we need to be able to start doing that planning piece, but also those projection plans. All right. So I hope to see you for our 2-day training, November 18th, November 19th on tax strategy planning. For real estate investors, make sure to click that link down in the show notes or over in the Lady Landlords Facebook group. So you will be able to join us. We should have a good couple hundreds of real estate investors on that call. And I really hope that you will be able to get the value that I know you will from speaking to somebody that's an absolute amazing expert in the space. I have been blown away from what she's already been able to help me do with my portfolio for 2024. I know she can do the same for you. So thank you very much for joining me today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords Podcast. We release a new episode every single Tuesday, and I will see you all next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords Podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.